The huge council chamber buzzed with voices from 1,000 different worlds. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the small human section, watching the debate unfold around her. For the past 3 hours, the Galactic Council had been discussing the future of the Outer Rim territories. Every species had their say except humanity. Elena looked at the massive dome above her head. Holographic displays showed the votes as they came in. Red lights meant no, and green lights meant yes. So far, everything was red for the human proposal. The young species from Sol 3 does not understand the complexities of galactic expansion, said Speaker Vorthak. The old Valdorian's voice echoed through the chamber like stones falling down a mountain. Their colonization methods are chaotic and dangerous. Elena felt her jaw tighten. Chaotic and dangerous. That's what they always said about humans. Never mind that human colonies had the lowest conflict rates in the galaxy. Never mind that humans were the only species that seemed able to make friends with everyone they met. The Zephyrian delegate stood up next. Her crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the floor. The harmonic resonance of human settlements disrupts the natural order, she sang in her musical voice. They plant their cities without proper cosmic alignment. More voices joined in. The Nexari collective spoke as one mind. Human unpredictability creates inefficiencies in our trade calculations. The insectoid Kretok clicked their approval. Mammals lack the patience for proper territorial expansion. Elena had heard it all before. For 50 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. For 50 years, they had been treated like children who didn't know better. It didn't matter that human doctors had cured 3 different plague outbreaks. It didn't matter that human engineers had built the fastest ships in the galaxy. It didn't matter that human peacekeepers had stopped more wars than any other species. The humans were still the new kids who needed to learn their place. The vote will now commence, announced Speaker Vorthak. All in favor of restricting human expansion into the Outer Rim territories, please activate your voting crystals. Elena watched the board light up. Green lights appeared like stars in the night sky. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The Valdorians voted yes. The Zephyrians voted yes. The massive Nexari collective voted yes as one mind. Even the small trader species voted yes. When the counting stopped, the numbers glowed on the main display. 847 votes in favor, 1 vote against. Only humanity had voted for their own freedom. Speaker. Vorthak's voice filled the chamber. The motion passes. Human expansion into the Outer Rim is hereby restricted pending a review of their colonization methods. This review will be conducted by a committee of elder species and may take up to 50 standard years to complete. 50 years. Elena almost laughed. In 50 years, her grandchildren would be old. The current human colonies would have grown into major worlds, and the Council would still be reviewing whether humans deserved to expand further. Elena stood up slowly. The chamber grew quiet as thousands of alien eyes turned toward the human section. She had prepared a speech for this moment. She had practiced it in front of mirrors and fellow ambassadors. She had memorized every word and planned every gesture. Instead, she spoke from her heart. For 50 years, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, humanity has tried to earn respect in this council. We have followed every rule, obeyed every regulation, and accepted every insult with patience. The chamber rustled with nervous energy. This was not how defeated proposals usually ended. We have watched our trade proposals die in committee. We have seen our scientific discoveries dismissed as interesting but impractical. We have offered our help in crisis after crisis, only to be told that elder species have better solutions. Elena walked down the steps toward the speaker's podium. Her small human delegation followed behind her. Ambassador Chen from Mars, Ambassador Okafor from the Jupiter colonies, Ambassador Santos from the Generation ships, all of them moving together. Today, this council voted that humanity is not mature enough to choose where our own people may live. 847 civilizations believe they know better than we do about our own future. She reached the podium and looked up at Speaker Vorthak. The massive Valdorian seemed puzzled by her calm tone. We came here seeking partnership, Elena continued. We offered our friendship, our knowledge, and our loyalty. In return, we received condescension, restrictions, and the eternal promise that someday, when we were older and wiser, we might be allowed to make our own decisions. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the Nexari collective had stopped, their constant background humming. Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small crystal badge. It was the symbol of humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. The blue and green Earth was surrounded by stars, representing humanity's place in the greater galaxy. The Terran Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, Elena said clearly. We thank you for teaching us that respect cannot be legislated, only earned through actions. You have also taught us that some people will never respect you no matter what you do. She placed the badge on the podium with a soft click that somehow seemed to echo through the vast chamber. We will remember our friends here, Elena said, looking directly at a few delegates who had always treated humans fairly. But we will not waste any more time begging for basic dignity from those who have already decided we don't deserve it. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps seemed loud in the absolute silence. As they reached the great doors, Elena turned back one final time. You wanted to review our colonization methods for 50 years? She called out. Save yourselves the trouble. We'll colonize wherever we please, however we please, with whoever will have us as true partners, and we'll do it without asking your permission. The doors closed behind them with a deep final sound. In the chamber, 847 alien civilizations sat in stunned silence. Never in the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Council had a species voluntarily left. There were procedures for expelling troublesome members. There were punishments for species that broke the rules, but there was no protocol for a member species simply walking away. Speaker Vorthak was the first to find his voice. The session is adjourned, he announced weakly. We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss the implications of today's events. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many of them were already reaching for their communication devices. They had reports to send, governments to inform, and trade agreements to review. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was about to find out what it was like without the humans. In her shuttle flying away from the council station, Elena looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were human colonies working on impossible projects. Human doctors were saving alien lives. Human engineers were building things that shouldn't work, but somehow did. And now, for the first time in 50 years, they were going to do it all without asking anyone's permission. Elena smiled and opened a communication channel to Earth. This is Ambassador Vasquez, she said. Initiate Protocol Exodus. We're coming home. The message traveled faster than light across human space. Within 6 hours of Elena's announcement, every human colony, station, and ship knew that humanity had left the Galactic Council. Within 12 hours, Protocol Exodus was in full swing. Dr. Marcus Webb was packing his laboratory on Zephyr Prime when his colleague found him. Resonance of crystal wind moved with the musical grace of her people, but today her usual harmony sounded troubled. You cannot leave now, she sang, her crystal body pulsing with worried light. The younglings in Sector 7 are still recovering from the decay syndrome. Your treatments are the only thing keeping them stable. Marcus sealed another box of medical equipment and labeled it carefully. I'm sorry, Crystal, I really am. But my research grants were terminated this morning. The Council's health initiative said human medicine was too experimental for wider distribution. But your methods work, Crystal protested. The survival rate has increased by 93% since you arrived. I know. Marcus lifted the heavy box and added it to the growing pile by the door. But apparently working isn't enough. The medical board wants treatments that follow established protocols and show proper theoretical foundation. They said my approach was too intuitive and couldn't be replicated by other species. Crystal's light dimmed to a sad blue. What will happen to the younglings? Marcus paused in his packing. This was the hardest part of leaving. The Valdorian medical team will take over. They have excellent theoretical knowledge and centuries of experience. I'm sure they'll find a way to help. But even as he said it, Marcus knew it wasn't true. The Valdorians would approach the problem with logic and careful analysis. They would run tests and form committees and eventually develop a treatment that worked in theory. By then, most of the young Zephyrians would be dead. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. In the Kretak shipyards, human engineers were shutting down their workstations. The massive orbital construction project they'd been leading was only half finished, but their contracts had been canceled due to changing political circumstances. Engineer Lisa Park transmitted her final report to the Kretak supervisor. "The structural framework is stable, and we've completed the power distribution network," she explained. "The navigation systems still need calibration, and the artificial gravity generators require some fine-tuning, but the basic design is sound." The insectoid supervisor clicked uncertainly. "Your people had a unique approach to these problems. Our engineers think in different patterns," Lisa nodded. "You'll figure it out. The Kretak are brilliant builders. It might take longer without our chaos theory approach to problem solving, but you'll get there." She didn't mention that the human approach had been specifically designed to work around 3 major design flaws in Kretak engineering philosophy. The aliens would discover those flaws soon enough. On the border worlds between Nexari and Valdorian space, Captain Sarah Martinez was preparing her peacekeeping unit for withdrawal. The region had been tense for decades, with old territorial disputes threatening to flare into open war. Human peacekeepers had been stationed there for 20 years, using their particular talent for aggressive mediation to keep both sides talking instead of fighting. "The Nexari Collective is requesting one final meeting," reported Lieutenant Johnson. "They want to discuss transition protocols." Sarah looked out at the contested system where her ships had been patrolling. 3 planets, 2 species, and about 1,000,000 ways for this to go wrong once humans left. "Tell them we'll meet at the usual neutral coordinates," she decided. "But make it clear this is a goodbye meeting, not a negotiation. Our orders are to withdraw completely." The meeting took place in the empty space between the 2 fleets. The Nexari spoke with their usual collective precision. "Your departure creates a stability vacuum in this region. Our calculations show a 67% chance of conflict within 1 standard year." Sarah had run her own calculations and gotten similar numbers. "Then I suggest both sides work extra hard on their diplomatic skills. The Terran Federation is no longer available to referee your arguments." "But you understand both of our positions," the Nexari protested. "Your species has a gift for seeing compromise where we see only deadlock." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. "But apparently that gift isn't valued by the Galactic Council. They voted to restrict our expansion because we're too chaotic and unpredictable. Maybe some chaos was exactly what you needed. Back in human space, the massive orbital shipyards around Earth were humming with activity. Admiral Chen had activated every construction facility and called in every favor she could. Ships that had been built for other species were being retrofitted for human use. Construction contracts for alien governments were being canceled. The economic implications were staggering. Human shipyards had been building vessels for dozens of species, using construction techniques that other races couldn't replicate. Human ships were faster, more efficient, and somehow more reliable than anything else in the galaxy. "Sir," reported Commander Walsh, "we're getting desperate messages from the Altarian Trade Federation. Their entire merchant fleet was scheduled for refit in our yards. Without those upgrades, they can't maintain their shipping contracts." Admiral Chen looked at the reports scrolling across her screen. Similar messages were coming in from species across the galaxy. "Send them our regrets," she decided. "Recommend they contact Valdorian shipbuilders. Their ships are very reliable, even if they are slower and more expensive." On the frontier worlds, human colonists were making difficult decisions. Some had lived on alien worlds for generations, building lives and families in mixed communities. But Protocol Exodus was clear. All humans were invited to return to Terran space, and most were choosing to accept that invitation. The hardest goodbyes were happening in the research stations and universities where humans had worked alongside. Alien colleagues for decades. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent 15 years studying exotic matter with a team of Zephyrian physicists. Her departure meant the end of several groundbreaking research projects. "Your mathematical intuition cannot be replaced," her Zephyrian colleague sang sadly. "You see patterns that we cannot perceive through harmonic analysis alone." Sarah packed her personal notes and research data. "You'll find other approaches. The mathematics doesn't change just because I'm not here to point out the shortcuts. But she knew that wasn't entirely true. Human mathematics was different from alien mathematics. Where other species used elegant formulas and perfect logic, humans made intuitive leaps and found unexpected connections. It worked, but nobody could explain exactly why. As the weeks passed, the scale of the human withdrawal became clear. It wasn't just individual people leaving their jobs. Entire industries were being disrupted. Trade routes that humans had negotiated were breaking down. Peace agreements that humans had mediated were showing signs of strain. The Void Runners were the first to take advantage of the changing situation. These nomadic raiders had somehow developed a peaceful relationship with human traders, but they had no such agreements with anyone else. Within a month of the human withdrawal, piracy attacks increased by 300% along the outer trade routes. Ambassador Elena watched the reports from her office on Earth. Protocol Exodus was working exactly as planned. Humans were coming home, bringing their skills and knowledge with them. But she felt no satisfaction in the growing chaos they were leaving behind. Her aide brought in the latest intelligence summaries. "The Kalari system is showing signs of instability," he reported. "Without human mediators, the old honor feuds are starting up again." Elena nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Kalari were proud warriors who had been fighting each other for 1,000 years before humans arrived. Human peacekeepers had spent decades building trust and finding ways for different Kalari clans to settle disputes without bloodshed. "Any word from the council?" she asked. "Nothing official, but our intelligence sources say they're having trouble replacing human personnel in key positions. Apparently our chaotic and unpredictable methods were harder to replicate than they thought." Elena looked out her window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere up there, human colonies in the Outer Rim were thriving without council oversight. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what it meant to live without humans. She wondered which side would learn the more important lesson. 6 months after humanity left the Galactic Council, the first real crisis hit the Kalari system. The proud warrior race had maintained an uneasy peace for 20 years, but without human mediators to help them navigate their complex honor codes, old feuds began to resurface. It started small, a trade dispute between two clans over mining rights on Kalari 4. In the old days, the clan leaders would have met in single combat, and hundreds would have died in the resulting blood feud. But human peacekeepers had taught them a different way: structured debates where honor could be satisfied through words instead of weapons. Without humans to guide the process, the debates quickly broke down into accusations and insults. Within a week, the first shots were fired. Within a month, 3 major clans were at war. Council Observer Thelnax filed his report with growing alarm. "The Kalari conflict has spread to 7 systems," he wrote. "Traditional mediation methods have failed. Valdorian logic cannot penetrate their honor-based thinking. Zephyrian harmonic therapy only makes them more aggressive. The Nexari Collective's efficiency calculations are dismissed as soulless mathematics." The report landed on Speaker Vorthak's desk along with dozens of others. The Valdorian leader read through them with mounting concern. The galaxy seemed to be coming apart at the seams. In the Outer Rim, the trade routes that humans had established were becoming dangerous again. The Void Runners had returned to full piracy, attacking any non-human ship that entered their territory. Other species tried to negotiate with them, but the nomadic raiders seemed to speak a language that only humans understood. Captain Rixtal of the Altarian merchant fleet sent a desperate message to the council. "The Void Runners refuse all contact with our diplomatic teams. They keep asking where the storytellers are. We believe this refers to human traders, who apparently earned the pirates' respect through some form of cultural exchange we cannot replicate." But it wasn't just the violent situations that were falling apart. In the research stations and universities, projects that had been making steady progress for decades suddenly ground to a halt. Dr. Veltar, the Zephyrian physicist who had worked with Sarah Kim, stared at the equations that had once made perfect sense. "The mathematical models are becoming unstable," she sang in a worried tone to her research team. "Without Dr. Kim's intuitive corrections, our exotic matter calculations are producing impossible results." Her colleague, Harmonic of Deep Thought, pulsed with frustrated light. We have followed her methodology exactly. We have replicated her experimental procedures down to the smallest detail, yet we cannot achieve the same outcomes. Perhaps, suggested a third researcher, the human approach was not entirely based on logic. Dr. Kim often spoke of hunches and gut feelings that guided her work. The Zephyrians fell silent. Their species had spent millions of years developing perfect harmonic mathematics. The idea that effective science could be based on illogical hunches was almost impossible for them to accept. Similar problems were emerging across the galaxy. The Nexari Collective was experiencing its first efficiency decline in centuries. Their perfectly organized society had relied on human chaos consultants to identify problems that collective thinking couldn't see. Without human input, small inefficiencies were compounding into major systemic issues. Queen Mind Zactel reviewed the collective's performance reports with growing alarm. Productivity in manufacturing sectors has decreased by 23%, the unified voice announced. Quality control failures have increased by 47%. Innovation rates have dropped to near zero levels. Analysis indicates that human consultants provided pattern recognition that the collective could not achieve, reported the Efficiency Council. Their chaotic thinking processes identified problems before they became critical failures. Then we must develop similar thinking processes, Queen Mind decided. Impossible, replied the Council. Chaos cannot be systematized. Disorder cannot be organized. The human approach was fundamentally incompatible with collective consciousness. Meanwhile, in the Zephyr system, young crystal beings were dying from the decay syndrome that Dr. Webb had been treating. The Valdorian medical team that replaced him had impressive credentials and centuries of experience, but they couldn't replicate his results. Dr. Tokvan, the Valdorian team leader, studied the humans' research notes for the 100th time. His methodology appears to be based on educated guesswork, he reported to the medical board. There is no theoretical foundation for his treatment protocols. His drug combinations should not work according to established pharmaceutical principles. Yet the treatment was 93% effective, pointed out Dr. Merlak. Our theoretically sound approach has achieved only 31% effectiveness. Correlation does not imply causation, Dr. Tokvan replied stiffly. The human may have been lucky, or there may have been environmental factors we have not identified. We will continue to follow proper scientific procedures. But as more young Zephyrians died, the medical team's confidence began to waver. Dr. Webb's notes were full of references to trying something new and following intuition. These concepts were alien to Valdorian medical philosophy, which emphasized careful analysis and proven techniques. The problems weren't limited to high-profile situations. Across the galaxy, small human contributions were being missed in ways that nobody had anticipated. On Kretak Prime, the massive shipyard construction project had stalled completely. The human engineers had left detailed plans and specifications, but the Kretak builders couldn't make sense of some of the design decisions. The structural supports are positioned illogically, clicked Supervisor Technics. According to our engineering principles, they should be placed at regular intervals for optimal weight distribution. Yet the human design specifications call for irregular placement, noted engineer Velkix. Their calculations suggest this creates greater overall stability, but we cannot verify this through our standard stress analysis methods. The Kretak engineers spent weeks trying to understand the human approach. Their mathematical models said the irregular support pattern should create weak points and structural failures. But computer simulations of the human design showed it was actually stronger than the traditional Kretak approach. How is this possible? Supervisor Technics asked in frustration. Their design violates fundamental engineering principles. Perhaps, suggested Engineer Velkix quietly. Our fundamental principles are incomplete. The suggestion was almost heretical. The Kretak had been building massive structures for thousands of years. Their engineering techniques were proven and reliable, but they had to admit that human-built ships were faster, lighter, and more durable than anything the Kretak had ever constructed. As reports of problems poured in from across the galaxy, Speaker Vorthak called an emergency session of the Council leadership. The chamber was smaller than the full assembly, but the mood was just as tense. "The situation is becoming critical," announced the Nexari representative. "Multiple systems are reporting instability, economic disruption, and social unrest. Our analysis indicates a direct correlation with the departure of human personnel." The Zephyrian delegate sang a mournful harmony. "Our young ones die while we debate the theoretical foundations of medicine. Pride has become more important than practical results." "The humans left us no choice," Speaker Vorthak insisted. "They were unwilling to follow established procedures and protocols. Their methods were chaotic and unpredictable." "But they worked," pointed out the Altarian trade representative. "Chaotic and unpredictable, yes, but effective. Our shipping routes are failing without their negotiation skills. Our research projects stagnate without their intuitive insights. Our conflicts escalate without their mediation techniques." The chamber fell silent as the leaders contemplated the growing crisis. For centuries, the Galactic Council had operated on the principle that older, more experienced species knew better than younger ones. The idea that the newest members might have something unique to contribute had never been seriously considered. "What are you suggesting?" Speaker Vorthak asked carefully. The Altarian representative hesitated before speaking. Perhaps we should consider inviting them back." The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the council represented. Admit that they had been wrong? Acknowledge that the young upstarts from Sol 3 had been right all along? Impossible. "Speaker," Vorthak declared, "the council has never reversed a decision of this magnitude. We cannot appear weak or indecisive." But even as he spoke, another crisis report arrived on his desk. The HFY War had spread to 2 more systems. The Void Runners had destroyed a major shipping convoy. 3 research stations had been abandoned due to equipment failures that human engineers could have easily prevented. Outside the council chambers, the galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the value of what it had lost. And slowly, reluctantly, some were beginning to think the unthinkable. Maybe the humans had been right to leave. Maybe they had been treated unfairly. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to swallow some pride and ask them to come back. But first, the council would have to admit that they had made a mistake. And for a body that prided itself on ancient wisdom and careful deliberation, that might be the hardest lesson of all. 2 years after humanity left the Galactic Council, the crisis that would change everything began with a routine hyperspace jump. The merchant vessel Peaceful Prophet was carrying medical supplies to the Outer Rim when it entered the Andromeda Junction, a critical hyperspace crossroads that connected 3 major spiral arms of the galaxy. The ship never reached its destination. The first sign of trouble came when the Peaceful Prophet simply vanished from all sensors. Search and rescue teams found nothing but scattered debris and a strange energy signature that matched no known technology. When a second ship disappeared the next day, then a third, panic began to spread through the shipping industry. Commander Vextel of the Council Defense Force led the investigation team. His ships approached the junction carefully, sensors at maximum range. What they found defied all understanding. "Report," he ordered as his tactical officer stared at the readings. In confusion. "Sir, there appears to be some kind of automated defense network surrounding the junction. Highly advanced, possibly ancient technology. It's targeting any ship that attempts to pass through the hyperspace corridor." On the main screen, geometric shapes of impossible complexity moved through space like living things. They were beautiful and terrifying, made of some material that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. "Analysis indicates the constructs are at least 50,000 years old," reported the science officer, "possibly much older. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases." Commander Vextal tried the standard council protocols. His ships broadcast friendship signals in 37 different languages. They transmitted mathematical sequences to show peaceful intent. They even tried musical harmonies that had worked with other ancient technologies. The geometric shapes responded by destroying 2 more ships. The news reached the council chambers like a shockwave. The Andromeda Junction was one of the most important hyperspace routes in the galaxy. Without it, trade between the spiral arms would be reduced to a fraction of its current volume. Entire civilizations depended on that route for survival. Speaker Vorthak called an emergency session within hours. The greatest minds in the galaxy gathered to solve the crisis. Valdorian logicians analyzed the energy patterns. Zephyrian harmonicists tried to find resonance frequencies that might communicate with the ancient network. The Nexari Collective devoted millions of minds to decoding the alien technology. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing worked. The defensive network appears to be completely autonomous, reported the Valdorian science team. It responds to our approaches with escalating force, but shows no signs of intelligence or communication capability. Our harmonic analysis suggests the constructs are not truly mechanical, sang the Zephyrian delegates. They exhibit properties of both technology and living organisms. This may explain why traditional communication methods have failed. The Nexari Collective had run billions of simulations. All scenarios result in the same outcome, they announced. The network cannot be bypassed, negotiated with, or destroyed using conventional methods. It represents a complete blockade of the Andromeda Junction. As the crisis deepened, desperate suggestions began to surface. Some delegates proposed massive military action, throwing the full force of the Council Defense Force against the ancient network. Others suggested abandoning the route entirely and finding alternate hyperspace corridors that would take years to establish. Then, the intelligence reports began to arrive. The first came from a Kretok smuggler who had been operating in the lawless regions beyond Council space. His ship had been damaged by pirates and he needed emergency repairs. Following old charts, he had approached a system that was supposed to be uninhabited. Instead, he found a thriving human colony. The humans were friendly enough, the smuggler reported to Council intelligence. Fixed my ship, sold me supplies, even gave me current navigation data for the region. But when I asked about the Andromeda Junction crisis, they just smiled and said they'd found a way around it. More reports followed. Human ships were moving freely through regions that had been cut off by the crisis. Human colonies were receiving supplies that should have been impossible to deliver. Somehow, the humans had solved the problem that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy. The breakthrough came when a Council spy satellite detected something impossible. A human cargo ship emerging from the Andromeda Junction, completely unharmed. Speaker Vorthak stared at the sensor data in disbelief. How is this possible? Our best ships cannot even approach the junction without being destroyed. The answer came in the form of an intercepted human communication. The message was routine cargo manifests and flight plans, but hidden in the technical details was something extraordinary. The humans weren't fighting the ancient network or trying to bypass it. They were talking to it. Dr. Webb, the same human, medical researcher who had been treating young Zephyrians, had somehow established communication with the ancient defense system. According to the intercepted data, he had discovered that the network wasn't a weapon at all. It was a quarantine system. The geometric constructs were protecting something, a species of energy-based life forms that were critically endangered. The ancient network had been placed there millions of years ago to prevent contamination of their breeding grounds. It attacked ships not out of hostility, but to protect beings so fragile that even spacecraft emissions could harm them. The humans had figured out how to communicate with both the network and the energy beings it protected. They had developed special shield frequencies that filtered their ship emissions and negotiated safe passage routes that didn't disturb the breeding areas. More importantly, they had done it all in a matter of weeks, using methods that the Council's finest minds would have dismissed as unscientific and unpredictable. Ambassador Resonance of Crystal Wind, who had replaced Speaker Vorthak after his resignation, stood before the Emergency Council session with a heavy heart. The beautiful Zephyrian's crystal body pulsed with shame and regret. "Fellow delegates," she sang in harmonies that conveyed deep sorrow, "we have spent 2 years learning what we lost when humanity left our council. Today we face the ultimate proof of our short-sightedness." She activated the holographic display, showing the Andromeda Junction crisis alongside data on every other problem the galaxy had faced since humanity's departure. The Kalari system burns with civil war that human mediators prevented for 20 years. The Void Runners terrorize our trade routes because only humans understood their cultural codes. Our research programs stagnate without human intuition to guide them. Our medical advances cease without human innovation to inspire them. The chamber was absolutely silent as she continued. We told ourselves that humans were too young, too chaotic, too unpredictable to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. We believed that age brought wisdom and that established methods were always superior to new approaches. Crystal Wind's light dimmed as she reached the hardest part of her speech. We were wrong. Completely, utterly, catastrophically wrong. The humans did not simply contribute labor or resources to our council. They contributed perspective. They saw solutions where we saw only problems because they were willing to be wrong, to try again, to improvise. She gestured to the crisis data. While we spent weeks analyzing the Andromeda Junction with our traditional methods, humans solved the problem in days using approaches we would have called unscientific. While our medical experts debate theoretical foundations, human doctors save lives using treatments that shouldn't work but do. While our engineers follow established principles, human builders create structures that are stronger, faster, and more efficient than anything we've ever designed. The silence stretched on as 800 delegates contemplated the magnitude of their mistake. Finally, the Altarian trade representative spoke up. "What are you proposing, Speaker Crystal Wind?" The Zephyrian's light pulsed with determined brightness. "I propose that we do something unprecedented in the history of the Galactic Council. I propose that we admit we were wrong and ask the humans to return." The chamber erupted in voices from 1,000 worlds. Some delegates shouted in outrage at the suggestion. Others sang or clicked or hummed their agreement. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The galaxy was falling apart without humanity. Ancient pride and traditional wisdom had failed to solve crisis after crisis. Only the chaotic and unpredictable humans seemed able to find solutions that actually worked. When the vote was finally called, the result was overwhelming. 846 votes in favor of inviting humanity back to the Council, 0 votes against, and 1 abstention. The abstaining delegate, an elderly Valdorian philosopher, stood to explain his position. "I cannot vote on this matter," he said solemnly, "because voting implies we have a choice. We do not. We should not be debating whether to invite the humans back. We should be begging them to forgive our blindness and help us fix the disasters we have created in their absence." As the session ended, Crystal Wind faced the most difficult task of her career, composing a message to humanity that would somehow convey the magnitude of the Council's regret and the desperateness of their need. "How? Do you apologize for 2 years of chaos?" Ambassador Elena Vasquez read the message from the Galactic Council 3 times before she fully believed what she was seeing. The formal language couldn't hide the desperation behind the words. Speaker Resonance of Crystal Wind was asking, no, begging, for humanity to return to the Council. The message detailed every crisis, every failure, every problem that had emerged since humanity's departure. It was a complete admission of guilt, wrapped in diplomatic language but unmistakably clear in its meaning. The galaxy needed humans more than humans needed the galaxy. Elena called an emergency meeting of the Terran Federation Council. The leaders of humanity gathered in the same chamber where they had voted to leave the galactic community 2 years earlier. But the mood was very different now. "They're offering us full membership restoration," reported Admiral Chen, scrolling through the technical details of the proposal. "All previous restrictions lifted, immediate reinstatement of trade agreements, and formal apologies for past treatment." "It's not enough," said Ambassador Santos bluntly. "They want us to come back and fix their problems, but they're offering us the same junior partner status we had before. What happens the next time they decide we're too chaotic for their taste?" Elena nodded. "I agree. If we're going back as equals, not as the grateful children who've been invited back to the adult table." Over the next week, humanity drafted its response. The terms were unprecedented in galactic history, but then again, no species had ever voluntarily left the Council before, returning in a position of strength. When Elena's ship docked at the Council station, she was surprised by the reception waiting for her. Instead of being escorted to the newcomer's entrance as had happened 50 years earlier, she was met by Speaker Crystal Wind herself. "Ambassador Vasquez," the Zephyrian sang in harmonies of deep respect, "humanity honors us with your return." Elena smiled. "We haven't returned yet, Speaker. We're here to discuss terms." The negotiations took place not in the vast council chamber, but in the smaller diplomatic conference rooms. For 3 days, Elena and her team laid out humanity's conditions while council representatives listened with growing amazement. Full voting rights, Elena stated clearly. Not junior membership, not probationary status. Equal voice on all council. Matters. Territorial sovereignty, added Admiral Chen. Human colonies in the Outer Rim will remain under Terran Federation governance. No council oversight of our expansion or colonization methods. Research autonomy, continued Dr. Patel. Humanity's new chief scientist. Human research programs will not be subject to approval by council committees. Our methods may be unconventional, but our results speak for themselves. The council delegates exchanged worried glances. These terms went far beyond anything they had imagined offering. And finally, Elena concluded, formal recognition of the Innovation Corps. What is this Innovation Corps? Asked the Nixari representative. Elena smiled. Mixed species teams designed to tackle problems using both traditional council wisdom and human innovation. Half the team members will be human, half will be from other species. They'll be given the authority to try unconventional solutions to difficult problems. The Valdorian delegate looked uncomfortable. This seems to suggest that council methods are inadequate. Not inadequate, Elena replied diplomatically. Incomplete. Your species have millennia of wisdom and experience. But sometimes experience can become a limitation. Sometimes the fact that something has never been done before is exactly why it needs to be tried. The negotiations continued for 2 more days. Every term was debated, every detail examined. But in the end, the council representatives knew they had no choice. The galaxy was falling apart without human innovation, and humanity held all the negotiating power. When Elena finally entered the Great Council chamber to address the full assembly, the atmosphere was completely different from her last appearance. There. She didn't take the supplicant's position at the newcomer's podium. Instead, she was escorted to a seat of honor that had been specially created for the occasion, the chair of Essential Partners. The symbolic importance was not lost on anyone. Humanity was not returning as junior members grateful for acceptance. They were returning as indispensable allies whose departure had nearly brought galactic civilization to its knees. Distinguished delegates, Elena began, her voice carrying, clearly through the vast chamber. The Terran Federation has considered the Council's invitation to return. We are honored by your request and moved by your acknowledgement of past mistakes. The chamber held its breath as she paused. Humanity will return to the Galactic Council, she announced, and the chamber erupted in relieved harmonies, clicks, and musical tones from 1,000 different species. Elena waited for quiet before continuing. But we return not as the junior partners we once were, seeking approval and acceptance. We return as equals, with full rights, territorial sovereignty, and the freedom to contribute our unique perspective to galactic civilization. She gestured to the mixed group of human and alien delegates sitting in the new Essential Partners section. Our first proposal as returning members is the formal establishment of the Innovation Corps. These mixed species teams will tackle the problems that traditional methods cannot solve. The Andromeda Junction Crisis, the Kalari Civil War, the plague outbreaks in Zephyrian space. All of these challenges require new thinking, new approaches, new combinations of wisdom and innovation. The proposal was distributed electronically to all delegates. The terms were revolutionary. Teams with equal representation from human and non-human species, authority to bypass traditional bureaucratic procedures, and funding to try experimental solutions that might fail spectacularly. The first Innovation Corps team will address the Andromeda Junction, Elena continued. Dr. Marcus Webb, who successfully communicated with the Ancient Defense Network, will lead a joint human Zephyrian team to establish permanent safe passage protocols. In the Zephyrian section, resonance of crystal wind pulsed with grateful light. Her people's younglings were still dying from the decay syndrome, and Dr. Webb represented their best hope for survival. The second team will focus on the Kalari conflict, Elena announced. Captain Sarah Martinez will work with Kalari Cultural experts to develop new mediation techniques that honor their warrior traditions while preventing unnecessary bloodshed. The proposals continued. Human engineers would work with Kretak builders to develop new construction techniques. Human traders would partner with former council members to re-establish relationships with the Void Runners and other previously hostile groups. Human researchers would collaborate with alien scientists to restart the stalled research programs. But most importantly, humans would share their greatest gift, the willingness to try something new. For too long, Elena concluded, the galaxy has been divided between the wisdom of experience and the chaos of innovation. We propose a third path, the marriage of both. Human creativity guided by alien wisdom. Ancient knowledge enhanced by new perspectives. Proven methods improved by unconventional thinking. The vote on the Innovation Corps proposal was called immediately. For the first time in galactic history, a returning species was not only welcomed back, but given unprecedented authority to reshape how problems were solved. The result was unanimous, 847 votes in favor, 0 against. As the celebration began, Elena found herself approached by delegates from across the galaxy. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence 2 years earlier now wanted to discuss collaboration opportunities. Dr. Veltar, the Zephyrian physicist who had struggled without Sarah Kim's insights, practically sang with excitement. "We have maintained your laboratory exactly as you left it," she told Dr. Kim, who had returned with the human delegation. "The exotic matter equations have been waiting for your intuitive corrections." The Krytok engineering supervisor, who had been baffled by human construction techniques, clicked eagerly as he spoke with Admiral Chen. "We have preserved all human design specifications. Our builders are eager to learn your methods of structural chaos. Even the Nexari Collective, which had always prized efficiency above all else, approached the humans with interest. Your chaos consultants identified patterns that collective thinking could not perceive," they admitted. "We wish to learn how disorder can create greater order." But the most meaningful moment came when a young Zephyrian approached Dr. Webb. The crystal being's light was weak and flickering, clearly suffering from the decay syndrome that had claimed so many lives. "You are the story healer," the youngster sang in a voice like breaking glass, "the one who saves our people with impossible medicine." Dr. Webb knelt down to the young being's level. "I'm just a doctor who tries things that might not work. Sometimes I get lucky." "Will you try to help me?" the youngster asked. "Of course," Dr. Webb replied. "That's what we do. We try new things. We help where we can, and we never give up on finding better ways." As the formal session ended and delegates began to disperse, Elena stood at the great windows of the council chamber, looking out at the stars. 2 years ago, she had walked away from this place in frustration and anger. Today, she was returning, with humanity's head held high and the galaxy's future looking brighter. Ambassador Santos joined her at the window. "Think it will work this time?"